The dying colony sat in silence, almost as if the entire moon had taken its final breath. Darkness covered every corner, and the broken lights flickered like weak fireflies. Metal walls were cracked, windows shattered, and the cold wind moved through empty halls like a whisper of death. Families pressed together in small rooms, trying to stay warm and trying not to cry too loudly. They had been promised rescue many times, but no ship ever came. Hope was thinning out like smoke in the air. The colony leader, an older alien named Lero, stood beside a console that barely worked. His hands shook as he sent one final message into space. It was a desperate cry, a voice filled with fear, sadness, and the pain of being forgotten. Everyone in the colony watched him, waiting for a miracle, waiting for something to change. But deep inside, they all believed the truth. No one was coming. Their own government had left them to die. They were alone in the universe. For hours, nothing happened. The skies remained empty. The radios stayed silent. Children asked their mothers if they would ever see the sun again. Some adults broke down quietly, covering their faces, ashamed of their tears. Lero sat on the floor, exhausted, his heart breaking as he wondered if his last message would ever reach anyone. But far away, in a different part of the galaxy, a small human scout ship drifted through cold space. It was an old model, scratched, patched, and barely holding together. Inside, the lone pilot, Jackson Reed, was checking the screens when a sudden blinking light appeared. It was faint, almost dying, but it was real. A distress signal. He replayed it, listening to the trembling voice begging for help. He did not know the species. He did not know the location. But he did know one thing. Someone needed him. Jackson leaned forward, eyes sharp, heart beating faster. Most people would ignore a signal like this. It was too far. Too dangerous. Too unknown. But he was human. Humans had a strange rule in the universe. They did not walk away from people in pain. They did not leave others behind. Even if the enemy was stronger. Even if the odds were impossible. Jackson adjusted his ship and changed his course without hesitation. Back on the dying colony, another night arrived with no answer. The temperature dropped sharply. Lero closed his eyes and whispered a small apology to everyone, feeling like he had failed as a leader. But then, a young boy pointed at the sky. At first, no one believed him. But then they saw it. A streak of light cutting through the darkness, descending toward the surface. A ship. A human ship. The survivors gathered outside despite the cold. Hope returned like a sudden flame. The ship landed roughly, shaking the ground. Dust rose everywhere. The door opened slowly, and Jackson stepped out, wearing a simple suit and carrying nothing but a small pack. He scanned the crowd with serious eyes. They looked weak, hungry, scared, and betrayed. He felt anger rise inside him. He walked forward, stopped in front of Lero, and spoke in a calm but powerful voice. He did not raise a weapon. He did not show fear. He only said one sentence, a sentence that made every survivor gasp and feel something they had not felt in a long time. "Whoever left you to die," Jackson said, "they will regret it." The survivors looked at him with wide eyes. A single human standing against the darkness of an uncaring galaxy. Jackson turned back toward his ship and activated the long-range beacon. His message was simple and strong. "Earth, a colony has been abandoned. They need us." And humanity heard the call. The signal Jackson sent traveled through deep space like a spark in the dark. It bounced from relay to relay, passing through abandoned stations, old satellites, and forgotten corners of the galaxy until it reached the one place where cries for help never went ignored. Earth. Within minutes, the message hit emergency channels, military lines, and civilian volunteer groups. Humans reacted fast, because to them, saving lives was not a duty. It was instinct. In a command center on Luna Base, alarms rang as officers gathered around the screen. The room filled with whispers when they saw the broken colony, the damaged buildings, and the thin, weak faces staring at Jackson's ship. The chief officer, a tough woman named Commander Alara, stared at the footage with a cold fury in her eyes. She knew that no normal species would ignore such a painful call. But she also knew some governments in the galaxy were cruel, selfish, and corrupt enough to abandon their own colonies. She slammed her hand on the table. Mobilize the rescue teams. No delays. They need us. Across Earth and its space stations, people responded without hesitation. Engineers packed tools. Medics filled boxes with emergency supplies. Soldiers loaded weapons, not to fight a war, but to protect the helpless. Pilots prepared ships for a dangerous jump through unstable space. Volunteers, normal citizens with simple jobs, stood ready to help strangers they had never met. Humanity moved like a wave of determination. They were not the biggest species. They were not the most advanced. But they had something else. A heart that refused to stay silent when others suffered. Meanwhile, on the dying colony, Jackson worked non-stop. He moved through broken rooms like a blur, helping lift debris, fixing small systems, and checking injured survivors. He was only one man, but he acted with the force of many. The survivors watched him with amazement. They had heard stories about humans, the so-called Deathworlders, who survived storms, predators, disasters, and still found time to smile. Seeing one in person felt unreal. Children followed him quietly, staying close as if his presence alone made the cold less painful. Jackson tried to joke with them in simple words, just to ease their fear. Adults helped him carry supplies and distribute whatever little food remained. Lero walked beside him, trying to understand how one human could bring so much hope. As they worked, a strange sound echoed through the broken sky. A deep hum. A vibration. The noise grew louder and louder until shadows appeared above the clouds. At first, the survivors thought it was the enemy returning to finish them. Panic spread quickly. But Jackson stepped out into the cold wind and stared at the sky with calm confidence. Dozens of lights broke through the clouds, massive engines, glowing blue cores, and metallic wings. They were human rescue ships. Big, strong, and ready for anything. The survivors gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others cried with relief. They had never seen a fleet move so fast. The humans did not hesitate for orders. They landed immediately, forming protective arcs around the colony. Soldiers ran out first, securing the area. Medics followed, rushing to treat the sick and injured. Engineers brought warm lights and power generators, restoring life to the dead shadows. Commander Alara stepped off the lead ship, her coat flapping in the cold air. She saw Jackson and gave him a firm nod, proud of his courage. She then turned to the terrified survivors and spoke in a loud, steady voice. "You are safe now. Humanity is here." The colony erupted in emotion. Some hugged the soldiers. Some collapsed in relief. Some simply stared with wide eyes, realizing humanity had crossed a deadly stretch of space just to save them. But high above, in the far distance where stars looked like tiny sparks, another fleet had begun to move. The ones who abandoned the colony. The ones who wanted the survivors gone forever. They saw the human ships, and felt anger. The next storm was coming. And humanity was ready. The repaired lights flickered back to life one by one, bringing soft warmth to the once dead colony. Humans and survivors worked side by side, clearing rubble, setting up tents, and giving out warm food. For the first time in weeks, the colony felt alive again. Children laughed softly. Adults breathed easier. Even the sky looked brighter. But Jackson felt something different, a strange heaviness in the air. A sound too deep to ignore. A vibration in the ground that did not belong to human ships. He stopped walking, eyes narrowing as he stared at the distant horizon. Commander Alara saw the tension on his face and walked over. "What is it?" she asked. Jackson did not answer with words. He simply pointed at the sky. Dark shapes appeared in the distance, growing larger by the second. Not rescue ships. Not traders. Warships. Sleek, sharp, and painted in the colors of the government that abandoned the colony. The same government that wanted the survivors gone, not saved. They were returning, not to help, but to erase evidence and silence every witness forever. Fear ran through the colony like a cold wind. Survivors rushed behind buildings, grabbing their children and hiding in groups. Some whispered prayers. Others trembled, remembering the day they were left here. Alara raised her communicator. "All units, battle formation. Protect the colony." Soldiers sprinted to positions, raising shields and activating defense drones. Engineers rushed to cover civilians. Medics moved children deeper into safe shelters. Every human moved with purpose, not panic. The enemy ships descended slowly, confident and calm. Their leader, a tall alien with burning red eyes, appeared on the communication screen. His voice was cold and sharp. "Humans," he said, "you have interfered with matters that do not concern you. Step aside. This colony is under our control." Alara crossed her arms. "Under your control? You abandoned them." "They were weak," the alien replied. "Not worth resources. Now move, or be destroyed." Jackson stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with fire. "You will not touch them." The alien laughed. "One human stands against us." Jackson looked around at his team, at the soldiers ready to defend strangers, at the engineers who refused to leave their posts, and at the medics holding injured children in their arms. "Not one human," he said. "All of us." The enemy ships opened fire first. Bright beams of energy rained down toward the colony. But the humans reacted with incredible speed. Shields rose, soldiers rolled into cover, and defense batteries countered with precise blasts. The air shook with explosions as fire lit up the sky. Despite the chaos, humans protected every civilian. A medic shielded a group of children with her own body. An engineer crawled into the open to restart a disabled shield generator. A soldier took a hit on his armor but refused to fall, pushing forward to protect families hiding behind him. The enemy ground units landed and charged forward, thinking the humans would break easily. They were wrong. Humans fought differently, sharp, fast, unpredictable. They moved like they had survived hell before and were ready to face it again. The enemy expected fear. Instead, they met fury. Jackson led the front line, blocking enemy soldiers from reaching the shelters. His suit sparked with damage, his arm torn from a blast, but he kept pushing. Lero watched in awe, feeling something he had never seen before, humans fighting not for glory, not for power, but for strangers. The enemy commander watched the battle with growing frustration. His soldiers were stronger on paper, but they lacked something humans had: purpose. Every human fought like someone's life depended on them, because it did. The enemy tried one final push, sending a massive wave of troops. But at that moment, something thundered above the clouds. A deep, powerful rumble that made both sides look up. More human ships arrived. Bigger. Heavier. Angrier. The sky split open with blazing engines. Reinforcements had come. The enemy commander's expression finally changed, from arrogance to fear. They had awakened the fury of Deathworlders. And there was no turning back now. The sky roared like a living storm as the new human reinforcements broke through the clouds. Their engines glowed bright blue, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Every survivor, every soldier, every enemy froze for a moment as the massive ships took position over the colony. These were not small scout ships or rescue shuttles. These were war carriers, armored giants made to fight armies and protect worlds. Commander Alara stared upward with relief and fierce pride. "They came," she whispered. The enemy commander, still watching from his ship, felt the shift immediately. His expression tightened. These humans were not just responding to danger. They were answering an attack on innocent lives. And humans did not respond gently to that. All at once, the new human fleet activated their communication channel. A deep voice echoed across every device, every helmet speaker, and every corner of the colony. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of a thunderstorm. To the attacking fleet, stand down. You threaten civilians. You face the Deathworlders now. The enemy soldiers hesitated for the first time. Alara raised her arm. All units, advance. What followed was not chaos, it was controlled fury. Human ships released defensive drones that moved like a swarm of bright steel insects. They intercepted enemy shots, blocked missiles, and returned precise fire that tore through enemy armor. The ground teams pushed forward, shields glowing, rifles firing in sharp bursts. Their movements were fast but organized, like a dance learned through years of survival. The enemy expected reckless action from humans. Instead, they found terrifying discipline mixed with raw emotion. Jackson fought at the front with a damaged suit and a bleeding shoulder, but he moved like someone who refused to let any survivor fall. He tackled an enemy soldier trying to break into a shelter and dragged him across the ground before knocking him out cold. When another soldier aimed at a group of children, Jackson threw himself forward, taking the blast on his armor and firing back with ice-cold precision. Human medics were heroes of their own kind. One ran through live fire carrying an injured alien child in her arms. Another patched wounded survivors behind a shield generator while explosions shook the ground. They placed their own safety second and the safety of others first. Engineers crawled through rubble, lifting broken metal beams alone just to restore power. One of them, a young human named Rin, used his own body as support to stop a barrier wall from collapsing until two rescuers could pull survivors out. Every human action carried the same message. No one dies today. The enemy commander grew desperate. His soldiers were strong, but they did not fight with the same fire. They fought because of orders. Humans fought because of heart. Every human move showed something the enemy had never understood: compassion as a weapon. The commander ordered an all-out assault. His biggest walkers stepped forward, tall machines with heavy cannons. They fired on the colony with burning beams that split the ground. Survivors screamed and ducked for cover. But the human war carriers reacted instantly. Their rail cannons charged, humming with deadly power. Jackson shouted, "Clear the line." The colony shook when the cannons fired. A beam of pure energy ripped through the sky, slicing the enemy walkers like they were made of paper. The ground shook as the machines collapsed, explosions lighting up the air like falling stars. The enemy troops broke formation. Some ran. Some surrendered. Some froze in shock. The human fleet did not chase them. Instead, they formed a vast shield around the colony, vowing with their presence alone that no harm would come again. Commander Alara stepped forward on an open channel, her voice cold as steel. "Your attempt to erase these people ends here. Turn back or be removed." The enemy commander finally understood. He had not attacked a weak species. He had awakened the fury of Deathworlders. Slowly, trembling, his fleet began to retreat into the dark sky. The battle was over. But humanity's promise was far from finished. Silence fell over the battlefield, but it was not the silence of fear, it was the silence after a storm has passed, when breath returns and hearts finally understand they survived. Smoke drifted slowly into the sky, and the ruins were lit by warm lights from human ships hovering above like guardians. The survivors stepped out from their shelters, unsure if it was finally safe. But when they saw the humans still standing in protective lines, they knew the danger was gone. Jackson walked through the damaged streets, his armor cracked and his steps heavy. Children ran up to him, hugging his legs tightly. He winced at the pain in his shoulder but smiled anyway, gently patting their heads. Lero approached him, eyes shining with relief and disbelief. He looked around at the rebuilt shelters, the medics tending to the injured, the engineers repairing generators, and the soldiers keeping watch. "You came so far, for us," Lero said softly. Jackson wiped dust from his visor. "No one deserves to be left alone. Not in a galaxy this big." Commander Alara arrived next, her boots crunching over broken metal. She carried a datapad full of reports, but her attention stayed on the survivors. "We are setting up a temporary base. Food, water, and medicine will be available for all," she announced in her strong voice. "You are under human protection now." The survivors began to cry, not out of fear, but from the overwhelming feeling of safety they had long forgotten. Families hugged each other. Children waved at soldiers. Even the adults who had once lost hope began to stand taller, as if humanity's presence breathed life into their bones. Humanity worked endlessly. Soldiers cleared debris to build safe roads. Engineers restored the power grid and patched damaged walls. Medics treated injuries that had been ignored for weeks. Volunteers set up warming stations and distributed blankets. No one complained. No one asked for rest. This was the human way. Once they accepted responsibility, they did not stop until every life was safe. Meanwhile, the enemy government that abandoned the colony tried to send messages, pretending to be concerned. They claimed they were investigating the issue and planning a rescue. But their words held no power now. The survivors no longer trusted them. Humanity had already taken the role they failed to fill. A human diplomat arrived the next day. She stood before the colony council and declared, "You will have a choice. You can remain independent, or you can stand under human protection. No pressure. Your freedom comes first." The survivors exchanged looks. Freedom was something they had lost long ago. To hear humans offer it without asking anything in return shook them deeply. They were not being taken over, they were being lifted up. Days passed, and the colony transformed. Lights glowed again. Water flowed again. Children played again. The once dead moon now felt alive. And at the center of everything, humans stood like unshakable pillars. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast soft gold over the rebuilt colony, Lero approached Jackson. "Why?" he asked. "Why would humans risk their lives for people who are not your own?" Jackson looked at the sunset, then at the children playing with human soldiers, laughing freely for the first time in months. "Because you called for help," he said. "And humans answer." The simplicity of the answer hit Lero harder than any speech could. He realized humanity's strength came not from their technology, or their weapons, or their numbers. Their strength came from something far deeper, compassion fueled by fire. As night fell, the colony's new lights shined so brightly that the stars almost seemed jealous. Human ships circled above, silent and watchful, promising safety from any threat. A final message was recorded that night, one that would echo through the galaxy. They were left to die alone, the narrator said, until the Deathworlders arrived, and stood between them and the darkness. And from that day forward, the survivors were never alone again.